Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4. We're going to be reading from chapter 19 today, Prithu's 100 horse sacrifices. Prithu performs 100 sacrifices, but Indra prevents from completing the last one. Verse 1, Maitreya said, My dear Vidur, King Prithu initiated 100 horse sacrifices at the spot where the river Saraswati enters the sea on the eastern coast known as Brahmavarta, which is Swambhuva Manu's kingdom. Listen carefully to what happened. Verse 2, Indra reclined on his throne in his vast palatial chamber, watching the Apsaras dance, but his attention was elsewhere. King Prithu was preparing for his 100th sacrifice. The god had always known that the king intended to perform the full 100, and he had dutifully attended the other 99 and accepted his offerings. It required immense resources to perform such rituals, and he had been hoping that Prithu would exhaust his treasury long before reaching the 100th. Now it had finally arrived. Indra dismissed the Apsaras and stood up. He needed to act. Famous as Shatakratu, he who had performed 100 sacrifices, by which he had attained his post in heaven, he had no intention of letting this earthly king usurp him. That would be intolerable. Adorning himself with his full regalia, he descended toward the sacrificial arena, followed by his vast retinue. Verse 3, Meanwhile Prithu's sacrifice was just beginning. With the precise chanting of Vedic mantras, priests offered oblations of ghee into the great fire blazing in the beautifully decorated courtyard. As they intoned prayers to Vishnu, the skies parted and a brilliant light illuminated all directions. Everyone gazed up and saw the great eagle Garud gracefully descending with Vishnu on his back. They bowed in obeisance and called out in unison, All praise to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, glories to the Supersoul in every heart, the proprietor of all the planets and the enjoyer of all sacrifice. Verses 4 to 6, Apsaras danced delightfully while Gandharvas played drums, cymbals and flutes. Celestial sages crowded the skies, singing hymns in praise of Vishnu. The Lord was flanked by his chief Vaikuntha associates headed by Sunanda and Nanda. Just behind them were Brahma on his swan carrier and Shiva on his bull, Nandi. Indra followed on Airavat along with the other gods. Behind them were the Siddhas and Vidyadharas, Diti's sons and grandsons, as well as all the demons and yakshas. Among the celestial sages, Prithu recognized Kapila, Narad and Dattatreya. There were also many masters of mystic powers headed by Sanak Kumar. They all joined Vishnu as he took the principal place in the sacrifice. Verses 7 to 8. Pleased by the king's sacrifices, Bhumi provided all necessities with the same abundance as the wish-fulfilling cows of the spiritual planets. The flowing rivers supplied variously flavored water. The trees produced unlimited quantities of fruits and honey, and cows, fattened on green grass, gave profuse amounts of milk. Verse 9, Feigning a smile, Indra offered Prithu a gift. One by one, all the gods followed suit. When they were seated, the people in general came forward with their offerings. There was no shortage of wealth in the kingdom, as the oceans and hills were replete with jewels, pearls, and minerals, and the earth, fertilized with the rich minerals washed down from the hills, produced abundant crops. Verse 10, Indra looked about in wonder. How had Prithu become so affluent? His wealth was beyond human imagination, and it exceeded even that of heaven. The opulence of each of the king's sacrifices far surpassed any of those he had previously performed. He watched as Prithu bowed before Vishnu, who had attended all the Prithu's rituals. In great humility, the king rose and offered prayers. O inconceivable Lord, I fully depend on your grace. All this wealth is simply due to your inconceivable mercy. Verse 11. Indra watched mutely. The time to act had come. He had to find some way of impeding this sacrifice, otherwise soon Prithu would fully match his accomplishment, which might make him ambitious to seek Indra's post in heaven. When night fell, the god became invisible and seized the sacrificial horse. Rising into the sky with the animal, he smiled to himself as he went upward. That should stop Prithu. Verse 12. Reappearing in the sky as he made his escape, Indra assumed the saffron cloth of a renounced sannyasi. As he fled with the animal into outer space, sage Atri spotted him. He called out to Prithu's son, who was on guard duty. Pay heed, Indra is stealing the horse. Prithu's son picked up his bow and rose into the sky. Atri rose with him, pointing to Indra. Seeing the god's sannyasi dress, the sage's eyes blazed in anger. Not only was Indra trying to thwart the sacrifice, but he was creating a false impression of religion. He called to the prince, "Kill him." Verses 13 and 14. Angered by Indra's treachery, Prithu's son gave chase, crying all the while, "Stop, stop!" As he drew closer, his bow drawn, he saw that appeared to be a renunciant with Rudra beads, knotted hair, and ashes smeared on his body. The prince hesitated. This was not Indra but a pious sannyasi, a religious man. Atri must have made a mistake. He lowered his bow and turned back. Verse 15. Atri peered into the night sky and saw the prince returning alone. "Where is the sacrificial horse?" he demanded. "O Holy One, he remains with the virtuous sannyasi." Atri shook his head. "Foolish boy, that is no sannyasi, that's Indra, the lowest of the gods. Set on impeding your father's sacrifice, go immediately, kill him, and retrieve the horse." Verses 16 and 17. The fuming prince again chased Indra. He gradually gained on the fleeing god, calling out, "Wait a moment, O wicked one." Indra saw the formidable-looking youth, with his arrow trained on him, pursuing him even as Jatayu had chased Ravan. Immediately he abandoned the horse and vanished into thin air. Prithu's son took the horse by its bridle and returned it to the sacrificial arena. Verse 18. Atri stood surrounded by other great sages. As the sun rose, they saw Prithu's son return through the skies with the horse. Cheerful shouts greeted him. "Well done, what prowess! It is no mean feat to defeat the king of heaven, Indra." They surrounded him, slapping him on the back and congratulating him. Finally Atri said, "From this day forth you shall be known as Vijitshava, he who won the horse." They all cheered their agreement. Indra looked on from a safe distance as they chained the horse securely near the instrument used for slaying the animals. The god took a deep breath. He had to move quickly before Prithu arrived and 100th sacrifice was completed. Yet he could hardly steal the horse in broad daylight. Prithu's indomitable son would certainly assail him. Still, there were other ways. Indra swept his hands around in a circle, and a dense darkness at once fell over the sacrificial arena. As chaos set in, Brahmins stumbling over sacrificial paraphernalia and colliding with each other, the god slipped in unseen among them and again stole the horse. Verse 20. Atri had been standing near the horse with Vijitshava. He called out to the youth, "Make sure the horse is unharmed." Vijitshava put out his arms, feeling around for the horse. "I think it's gone," he exclaimed. Atri mystically rose above the darkness, peering this way and that. He saw in the distance Indra fleeing with the horse. He called to Vijitshava, "The wretched Indra has again seized the horse. Catch him at once." Vijitshava roared in anger. He clenched his bow and rose into the sky. As he gained on Indra and the horse, he saw that Indra was wearing the saffron garb of an ascetic and carrying a staff with a skull at the top. How could he kill this person, whoever he might be? He looked back at Atri. Verse 21, "Do not be fooled by his cheating ways," shouted Atri. "This is no sannyasi, it is the base king of heaven, Indra. Kill him immediately." Vijitshava drew back his arrow. Indra, abandoning his disguise, released the horse and vanished. Verses 22 and 23, Vijitshava once more recovered the horse. Accompanied by Atri, he returned to the sacrificial arena. As they travelled, Atri spoke ruefully, "Many unscrupulous men will henceforth copy Indra and deceitfully pose themselves as religious renunciants simply to steal others' wealth. Indeed, whatever disguises Indra assumes to steal, the horse will become symbols of sin." Verses 24 to 26. Over the next few days, Indra repeatedly tried to steal the horse, each time assuming a new disguise as a renunciant. Once he came naked, another time he wore red garments. Each time Atri recognized him and foiled his plan. On the last occasion, he spoke pretentiously from the Vedas to win the trust of the sages. Finally, King Prithu, infuriated by Indra's initiating so many irreligious practices, decided to take matters into his own hands. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared to kill the god. Verses 27 and 28. The priests cried out, "O king, pray desist. Only the sacrificial animal may be slain at this time. Any other killing in this arena will spoil the ritual. Do not worry, Indra has been weakened by his sin. When we chant certain mantras, he will be drawn into the fire and destroyed due to becoming your enemy." Verse 20, the priests intoned powerful Vedic incantations. Within a short time, the panic-stricken Indra appeared above the arena. He struggled to escape, but the power of the mantras pulled him toward the fire. Just then, four-headed Brahma appeared. Riding on a swan carrier, he placed himself between Indra and the sacrificial arena. His sonorous voice rang out. Verses 30 to 33. "Stop, Indra should not be slain. He represents Vishnu, therefore he is as good as the Lord and cannot be killed. Indra is the head of the gods whom you are trying to please with this sacrifice. How then can you slay him? Furthermore, by attempting to kill him, you will simply induce him to do further mischief. To impede the sacrifice, he has already adopted means which will destroy the clear path of religion. If you further oppose him, he will again misuse his power and introduce many other false practices. Be satisfied with the 99 sacrifices already performed." The priests and Prithu all rose in respect. The chief priest said, "It is our duty to fulfill the order of the king who desires 100 sacrifices." Brahma turned to Prithu, who stood with folded hands. "My dear king, as a great devotee of the Lord, you are already a liberated soul and do not need to conduct such rituals. I wish both you and Indra well. You are both parts and parcels of the Lord and in that sense non-different from one another. Therefore kindly give up your anger toward Indra." Prithu frowned. "I have determined to execute 100 sacrifices. How can I now neglect my determination?" Verses 34 and 35, Brahma said, "My dear king, sometimes even saintly persons meet with reversals. Such incidents should be taken as providential. Kindly heed my words with respect. We should always remember that if something happens by divine arrangement, we should not be sorry. The more we try to rectify such reversals, the more we enter into the darkest region of materialistic thought. Therefore stop this sacrifice." Prithu took a deep breath. Can Indra not be stopped instead? After all, I am trying to worship Lord Vishnu. Brahma said, Indra is the most stubborn of the gods. He will not stop. Unfortunately, even the gods are infected with such material desires. Verses 36 and 13 to 38. In order to steal the sacrificial horse, he has already introduced many dangerous limitations of religion which will deceive ignorant people. On the other hand, my dear king, you are an empowered expansion of Lord Vishnu. Due to Vena's sinful activities, religious principles were almost lost. You appeared from Vena's body to institute religion. O protector of the people, bearing in mind the purpose of your appearance, kindly act in such a way as to stop Indra creating any more pseudo-religions. Verse 39, Prithu's brow furrowed. Brahma was right. Better he give up his attachment to completing the 100th sacrifice and focus on establishing good government and religious principles. Prithu folded his palms. I bow to your decision, my lord. Let there be peace between myself and Indra. The king of the gods descended to the earth, and encouraged by Brahma, the two embraced. Verses 40 and 41. Taking Brahma's and Indra's permission, the king took the ritual bath that marked the end of his sacrifice. On Indra's command, all the gods appeared and offered him blessings. Prithu respectfully distributed gifts to the Brahmins. Pleased with the king, they offered him their heartfelt blessings. Verse 42. The chief sage then spoke on behalf of all present. Mighty king, everyone who attended the sacrifice by your invitation, including the Pitris, the gods, great sages and ordinary men, have been fully satisfied by your dealings and your charity toward them. And this brings us to the end of this chapter, Prithu's 100 horse sacrifices. Thank you for joining. We'll continue from chapter 20 next time. Hare Krishna.